So we are going to start with the first canto of Savitri, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 1, The Symbol Dawn. 4 years ago, we started Savitri with Book 4, and then we continued with Book 4, finished Part 2, Part 3, then last 4 months we were doing Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother. Now we will go back to the beginning. For a couple of reasons, we had done that sequence to kind of get introduced to Savitri in another manner. One of the reasons is that if you start with the symbol dawn directly, Savitri, then you are totally lost. It is one of the most difficult, in fact, the most difficult cantos in Savitri, the symbol dawn. And he kept on making it more and more difficult by writing this canto any number of times. There are something like 30-40 drafts of Savitri, of the symbol dawn itself. Some 35, 25 are fairly good, but some here and there were there already. And although he had sort of completed the whole of the symbol dawn, definitely by 44, still sometimes later on chit pads he used to write few more lines. So that way it looks as if the symbol dawn is something which is not to be completed. It kept on growing, becoming more and more complex also. The very first line, "It was the hour before the gods awake," appeared, I don't remember exactly, maybe in the 7th or 8th draft. In the 7th or 8th draft of Savitri, not in the beginning itself. And then there also in the draft, first time he wrote that first line, "It was the hour before the gods awake." The first version was with G small, gods small, G. But the G was small. Then he rewrote that line, he made it capital. It means that some kind of a significance is attached to every little detail. More and more meaning, so to say, is pumped into the line itself by that thing. Now this line, well, we are doing the Book of Beginnings, so that is a little background about the Book of Beginnings of the first canto itself. There are in all 5 cantos in the first book, and the first 2 cantos, the symbol dawn and the issue, they form what one might call the prolegomena of Savitri, the introduction, the preface to the whole of Savitri. It is on that basis that the rest of the poem sort of develops. Now, it catches the entire essence of this creation and its problem. These 2 cantos, they seize the entire issue of what, so to say, he is up to in describing in the rest of the poem, you see. Therefore, in a way, these 2 cantos do not really get connected in a manner of continuity with the next 22 cantos of the first book. There is a sort of an abrupt change. You have these two cantos, and suddenly from these two cantos he jumps, so to say, to Ashwapati, who comes down here and then describes the entire yoga tapasya of Ashwapati in 22 cantos of part 1. You see. Ashwapati yoga tapasya is for a specific purpose. In fact, it has threefold purpose, but the essential purpose is to bring down the divine power which will establish the divine creation here in the mortal world. To bring down from the transcendent, from the supreme, the divine power, Shakti, who will establish the divine manifestation, bring down the divine manifestation here upon earth. That is the basic crux of Ashwapati's tapasya. Therefore, you had there the beginning, in fact, the very first line of Canto 3 opens with the line, "A world's desire compelled her mortal birth." A world's desire compelled her mortal birth. First he described the problem, the issue in the Prolegomena, why Savitri should come, what she is supposed to do and all that, the day when Satyavan is to die and all those things. And then he suddenly starts with the line, "A world's desire compelled her mortal birth." World's desire, the aspiration of humanity, of the growing soul of the earth, the evolutionary soul seeking the divine manifestation upon earth, that is the world's desire. But the world's desire by itself is feeble, cannot go by itself very high, cannot climb to the topmost peak. And the yogi comes down here, he does yoga tapasya and takes the world's desire and carries it forward to the topmost summit, offers it to the Divine Mother. Look, this is your desire and you have to come down and take the mortal birth. So that is the kind of a plan of that thing. So, this is the book of beginnings. Yeah, it is very abstruse, but that is the way it is, you see. Book of beginnings. You like it? You have seen this one? Emmanuel. In the Simmerdawn, you have got two cantos. Two sections. In the first canto, you have got two sections. Section 1 has 46 sentences, 185 lines. Section 2 has 42 sentences and 156 lines. So the total number of lines in the Simmerdawn is 341. So we are perhaps going to do today only the section 1 in a rapid way, and then we'll go into more details gradually. Section 1 will cover more or less the way in which the mother has narrated some of these passages while the Huta paintings were being done. We'll take those passages to see today.
Why do you want to make it quickly?
Pardon me?
Why do you want to make it quickly, the section 1?
Today.
Why quickly?
To get what the mother is saying.
And we go back after?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. We'll do for a long time. That is why I said quickly, you see. So that we can keep the mother aside a little then. And have our own play, you see.
Okay.
It was the hour before the gods awake. The mother starts the explanation by narrating the story of creation. the story of creation which she had learnt from Thea when she was in Algeria. The beginning of this creation and a problem connected with that. So she says, there is an ancient tradition which describes the creation as done by some first emanations of the Supreme Mother, who were four emanations, four powers. In the sense and the feeling of the Supreme Power, they cut connection with their origin and became independent. It is a story, so you have to just accept. So there were four powers, they were emanated and they cut themselves out from the origin itself, you see. Being separated from their origin, entered into darkness. So that is the beginning of this creation, entered into darkness. Why? Because they have cut off their contact with the Divine Himself. Therefore it is all darkness, you see. In a certain sense, of course, that darkness is also a divine darkness. You see. Now she is describing four powers. The first was consciousness. Consciousness in light, and by cutting himself from his origin, he went down and down towards unconsciousness. So consciousness became inconscience in our language. This happened after they came. The second was bliss and turned into suffering. The third was truth and turned into falsehood. The fourth one was left life and turned into death. So you have got consciousness became inconscience, bliss becoming suffering, truth becoming falsehood, and life becoming death. Now, if these are the four independent powers, then we cannot say that one is due to the other. They are independent of themselves, you see. See, for instance, according to Theo, the mother says in the agenda that it is the presence of death that has brought falsehood. It is the presence of death that has falsehood. So the cause of falsehood is death. So if you want to remove falsehood, you have to remove death. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. No, it is falsehood that has given rise to death, according to Theo. No, I'm sorry, the other way around. I was mixing up. Falsehood has caused death. According to Theo. But she says that according to Sri Aurobindo, it is death which is the cause of falsehood. Death is the cause of falsehood. Death is the cause of falsehood. Now, but because it is a story, so we can't really question it. Now, if death and falsehood are independent powers which came out, how can they depend upon each other? You understood the question, but you have to take it as a story only, you see. This happened, the separation, this happened after they came into the vital level. Through various grades down, when they came to the vital level. When this was seen, it was decided that the second emanations would be made to repair the mistake of the first. And the second emanations were the gods. And the second emanations were the gods. This first line, it was the hour before the gods awake, refers to the condition of the world before the gods were born. Now, Mother is equating gods awake to gods were born. You see. If you go in the literal sense, you see, it means that. Actually, that gives rise to a kind of a puzzle also. It kind of gives rise to a puzzle. Whether they were awake and they were born. Because the first line says, it was the hour before the gods awake. It means that they keep on awaking cycle after cycle. So, can we say that awaking is equal to being born? No. But I think the Mother is not going these words in that literal sense. You see, you have to see that from the language. So you have to be a little careful also while understanding the language, what she means and what that means. Now, gods awake is a very important event. Because the very next line, next sentence, it was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence march. So, because the gods are not awake, therefore the divine event is blocked. It is not able to proceed further. Mind of night is coming in the way and blocking the divine event. This is what it would mean, you see. Now, what does that God awake mean? Gods never sleep. They never sleep, you see. The Puranas also say they never sleep, you see. Now, by the way, the story of the creation which is here, Mother has described these four powers separated from the divine origin and they became their opposites because they lost contact with the divine origin, you see. Sri Aurobindo has recited, recounted that story on a number of occasions in Savitri itself. We have got a number of passages, we shall see them, how that story and those descriptions in Savitri are exactly similar. How the power separated and how the opposites came out. That is very well described in Savitri in a number of places also, you see. So there is a kind of a connection between these two. Now these gods, who are these gods? These are the gods who are not even in the transcendent. They awake when the divine power comes into operation. The divine power comes into operation when the divine Shakti takes the birth, comes into operation and starts the work, you see. See, it is at that time the gods awake. Means it is the action of the divine Shakti which is kind of bringing out these energies of the total non-manifest into operation. So they are not even the gods of Sachidananda. They are gods unborn yet. They are not yet awake. They have not been pulled out of their total unknowability. Huh? No, they are potentially there. Potentially there, that's all. No, potentially there is no question of they are not really in that sense existing. They are non-manifest. In the non-manifest, they are present. They are not come into action. So it is that will happen, they will come into action when the divine Shakti steps into operation here. It is at that time she will bring down those, she will make them awake. Means the divine manifestation will be simultaneously with the awakening of these gods. And it is that hour which is being counted here, you see. This first line, the first condition of the word, before the gods were born. Well, that born then sounds okay in that sense. You see, in that sense. Means they have been brought out now from the total non-manifest into creation. They are born, you see. Now, the mother recited the story of creation in a number of places in her agenda, in other places also. Here is one more instance, 27th January 1962. She says, "But I also remember reading the tradition before I met Sri Aurobindo. Obviously, it was like a novel, a serialized romance of the world's creation, but it was very evocative. Thea called it the tradition. That was where I first learned of the Universal Mother's first four emanations. When the Lord delegated His creative power to the Mother, and it was identical to the ancient Indian tradition, but told like a nursery story. Anyone could understand. It was an image like a movie and very vivid. Story is all right, it becomes very clear. Now she says, an ancient Indian tradition. The story of creation as narrated by Theon to the mother, she is relating with the Indian tradition, ancient Indian tradition. In the ancient Indian tradition, it is said that how the creation starts. Brahma, the creator, he engaged himself into intense tapasya. He engaged himself into intense tapasya. Now, tapasya means what? You are concentrating your consciousness completely withdrawing, making it indrawn, so that when it is getting more and more internalized, a stage comes as if you have lost contact with the outside. A stage comes as if you have lost the contact with the outside completely. Because you have internalized yourself totally. You have withdrawn totally within yourself, so you don't know outside anything at all. So that is the darkness. That is the fall. That they have lost contact with the supreme manifestation from where you started the whole thing. So that is the ancient, means Brahma's tapasya of withdrawing himself within himself is as if to forget himself totally, because he has forgotten now totally. That forgetfulness, that is the inconscience or whatever you want to call it, you see. And it is from that point onward, then the whole process begins, you see. But the story does not tell how it develops further. Yes, Brahma is concentrating, he is engaged in intense tapasya, he is withdrawing within himself totally, so that there is no contact at all with the outside. Outside, that is Brahman himself, you see. So she made her first four emanations. The first was consciousness, the second set of emanation, gods, and light. The second was Ananda and love. The third was life, and truth was the fourth. Then, so the story goes, consciousness of their infinite power, conscious of their infinite power, instead of keeping their connection with the Supreme Mother and through her with the Supreme, instead of receiving indications for action from Him and doing things in proper order, they were conscious of their own power and each one took off independently to do as they pleased. They had power and they used it. They forgot their origin, where from they had come. They lost contact with the Divine Himself. So the moment the contact with the Divine is lost, you become absolutely the opposite of the whole thing, you see. And because of this Ananda, because of this initial oblivion, consciousness became unconsciousness, light became darkness, Ananda became suffering, love became hate. Opposite. Life became death and truth became falsehood. And they were instantly thrown headlong into what became matter. According to Theon, the world as we know it is the result of that. And that was the Supreme Himself in His first manifestation. You see, that is still the manifestation of Supreme Himself, although it looks opposite. See, the Upanishadic phrase is the Creator, the Supreme, or Brahman, or whomsoever you want to call him. He says, I want to be many. I am alone. I am kind of afraid of myself being alone, scared. I want to have companions. I want to be many. And therefore, he says, Bahusyam prajayayeti. Bahusyam, many, many. I want to be many. I am alone. I am one. Now, in order to have each of the many his own individuality, his own character, his own svabhava, his own nature, you have to make a separation. There is no point in having the same kind of uniformity everywhere. It is not like a mass production of a car, that you produce a particular car, Ford, and you got thousands of cars of the same size, but I want to have many types of cars. In order that I must separate, means I must become, if it happens within me itself, then there is no distinction between one and the other. All of them are identical. So in order that each one becomes separate, I must absent myself first and let each one come out first. So I became my opposite. I withdraw myself, and out of that withdrawal, then the many starts coming out. That is the first manifestation of that thing, you see. So there is a kind of a connection between that. But the story is easy to understand and quite evocative. On the surface, for intellectuals, it's very childish. Well, it's all right. The story of Paradise Lost, of Adam's fall, is also a childish story, but it is not really. But once you have the experience, you understand it very well. Once you have the experience, you understand it very well. I understood and felt the thing immediately. Now that is the real thing. In other words, she has experienced the whole process of withdrawing from the divine and turning into opposite. This is the greatness of the mother's sadhana. I understood and felt the thing immediately. She has experienced the whole process of creation, of manifestation, of withdrawing from the divine and then coming out fully out of that, you see. And once this world has become like that, the opposite, has become the vital world in all darkness, and they, from the vital world, have created matter, the Supreme Mother sees the result of her first four emanations, and she turns to the Supreme in a great entreaty. She sees that the opposite thing has happened now. What to do? She is kind of helpless. So her resort is go back to the Supreme. And she says, now that this world is in such a dreadful state, it has to be saved. It has to be saved. That is the first act of grace. The first act of grace has to be saved. We can't just leave it this way. Can we? Of course not. It has to be saved. The divine consciousness must be given back to it. What to do? She is asking the Supreme. Divine Mother is asking the Supreme, what do I do now? What can I do for that? You see. And the Supreme says, thrust yourself into a new emanation. New emanation. An emanation of the essence of love. When the four powers came out, they did not carry the essence of love with them. They had consciousness, they have bliss, they have life, all those things are there. The essence of love was not there. Down into the most material matter, that meant plunging into the earth, plunge into matter. So she plunged into matter. And that became the primordial source of the divine within material substance. This essence of love became the primordial source of the divine in the material creation. It is the presence of the divine love now in matter which is making things possible. She plunged into matter, and that became the primordial source of the divine within the material substance, and from there, as it is so well described in Savitri, she begins to act as a leaven in matter, raising it up from within. From within it has come up. That is the process of Bahusyam, to be many, how it happens. So the separation is there, the contact is lost from the divine creation, from the Creator. Then there is a second plunge, and the second plunge is carrying the essence of love. Now, Mother in other places says that this second plunge, this presence of love in matter, that is the first avatar of the Supreme. He has plunged again now here. That is the first avatar of the Supreme. And with the first avatar, he is named Satyavan. In the story of Savitri, he is named Satyavan. So the presence of the divine love in matter is the act of grace of the Supreme Mother herself, and it is because of that he falls into the grip of matter, into the grip of death. Sri Aurobindo says, writes about Satyavan, that Satyavan in the story of Savitri is in a grip of death. He has accepted that because of love. So actually the second plunge is the first avatar of the Supreme in this creation, and that is the avatarhood of Satyavan himself. Now to bring him out of that grip is the work of the divine Shakti. That is how the story will develop. So that is the kind of a prolegomena of Savitri, you see. So she plunged into matter, and that became the primordial source of the divine within material substance, and from there she begins to act as a leaven in matter, raising it up from within. This is important, from within. It has to happen from within. That is the process of evolution. So the purpose of the plunge of the divine into matter is to carry forward the evolution. Evolution. And as she plunged into the earth, this is all happening here. But earth is a chosen place. Earth is a significant center of this creation. Earth is a chosen place. A second series of emanations was sent forth. Second series of emanations was sent forth. The gods. It was the hour before the gods away. The second series of emanations. To inhabit the intermediary zones between Sachidananda and the earth and these gods. Well, great care was taken to make them perfect. You see, because the earlier four gods, they were not perfect enough, you see, to make them perfect. So they wouldn't give any trouble. That is how Mother is narrating you to see. But they are a bit too perfect. Therefore they are useless. A bit too perfect. Aren't they? Yes, a bit too perfect. They never make mistakes. They always do exactly as they are told. In short, rather lacking an initiative. So that perfection, too much of perfection means they don't have the initiative to carry out certain things. Now, lack of initiative, she now says, is because they don't have the psychic being in them. Lack of initiative means they don't have the psychic being in them. In fact, they were not surrendered in the way a psychic being can be, because they had no psychic in them. The psychic being is a result of that descent. Only human beings have it. And that's what makes humanity so superior to the God. So we should congratulate ourselves, you see, that we are really superior to the gods. We have the psychic being within us. The divine spark is something which is most precious in us, which even the gods don't have that, you see. Theon insisted greatly on this. Throughout his story, humans are far superior to gods and should not obey them. Humans should not obey the gods, according to him. They should only be in contact with the Supreme in his aspect of perfect love. That is what the psychic does, the aspect of love. Well, it goes on, we'll skip that thing and move further. So basically what it means that the second set of emanation, second set of gods which came out, the second emanation, she says the most important thing is it is the plunge of the divine himself in matter. That is the avatarhood of the divine in matter. That is what is named as Satyavan in the story of Satyavan and Savitri, and it is from that things are going to move. So it is at that moment the gods were born, you see. Across the path of divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence and mind. So there is something blocking the movement, the progress, the advance of the divine event. Now he has not mentioned what that divine event is. Obviously, the divine event means the divine manifestation upon earth. And that is not taking place because the mind of night is blocking the passage. And the mind of night is lying stretched upon the silence Mars. We'll see this in more detail later on. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the vision the embodied infinite. A fathomless hero occupied the world. So that is impenetrable, you see. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse. Her mind of night. Her stands for mind of night. Now, actually, in the earlier drafts, the phrase was not mind of night. It was the spirit of night. It was not mind, it was the spirit of night. Now, when Shevendra revised this version, when this line came, he started writing the spirit of night. He simply wrote the spirit and left it there, and then immediately wrote mind. He didn't continue, he didn't complete the word spirit. He just left it as it is, spirit, and then struck out and mind. So that was a big change which has taken place at that time. So in other words, he is making a very distinct suggestion that it is not the spirit of night which is coming in the picture, but it is the mind of night which is coming in the picture. The spirit of night, in a certain sense, more general. The spirit, the mind of night is more specific. More specific. What is the mind of night? The mind of night is the physical mind receiving the powers from inconscience, from darkness. The physical mind open to inconscience, that is the mind of night. So it is the physical mind which is dominated by the inconscience, which is coming in the way of the movement of the divine event. The physical mind governed by inconscience. It is that which is coming in the way of the moment of the divine event. That is a very specific kind of a thing. And it's a very big change he has made here. Specificity. So the real problem lies therefore with the physical's mind dominated, governed by the inconscious. So therefore, if the divine event has to advance, it is that physical's mind which should be transformed, which should be changed. It should become the mind of light. Instead of receiving the powers of the night, that physical's mind should open itself to receive the powers of light. Then it becomes the mind of light. Then the divine event starts moving forward. So he has already made all the suggestions in the first line itself, first couple of lines itself. See what is going to happen. See, in other words, mind of night is the real stumbling block for the divine manifestation upon earth. Mind of night in the physical. Therefore, if there has to be physical transformation, that is what it is hinted. The divine event means the physical transformation, the physical opening to the divine light. That is what the divine event means. It is that which should now be tackled. And the whole problem of Savitri is now focused in the very second line, second sentence itself. The entire problem of Savitri, the epic, is immediately brought into focus in the very second sentence itself, you see. Across the path of divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence march. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the vision of the unbodied infinite, a fathomless zero occupied the world. Now, what the mother says about that. As a result of the separation between the first emanations and the origin, the creation by these first emanations had become obscure, inconscient. And that is what Savitri describes here. He says the divine event, that is creation. Creation that will go on and on for eternity. It started with what he called the night of the foreboding mind. It is unconscious, immobile, lifeless, blind. All these things, the obscurity and the unconsciousness, the immobility, the lifelessness, the unbodied infinite, and a fathomless zero, all these words are meant to express the nothingness of the world. Well, Mother is summarizing the whole issue, meant to express the nothingness. But each one has its own specific connotation and significance. Savitri is not simply padding up with so many details or nothing. Each one has a shade and nuance in the whole process. Immobility, lifelessness, unbodied infinite, unconsciousness, each one has its own nuance. All these words are meant to express the nothingness of the world. A power of fallen, boundless self awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the inseparable mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and long to reach its end in vacant none. A power of fallen, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, long to reach its end in this zero, in this vacant knot. Now, what the mother says about that? Even the darkest unconscious, there was something like the remembrance of the divine origin, and it had an urge to wake up to existence. That is the word's desire. In Savitri language, that is the word's desire. And it had an urge to wake up to existence. But all the habit of the inconscient was so strong that it had a natural tendency to go back to nothingness, to slip back again into that thing. It is just that preceded and beginning of a conscious creation in the world. We saw that this emanation of light and consciousness had separated from its origin and had naturally fallen in conscience. The result was that the world created was a world of unconsciousness, a world of nothingness, of obscure nothingness. But in spite of everything, the divine origin was inside this. See, the divine has absented himself, so that himself is still there in the absent. See, the divine origin is still there. But in spite of everything, the divine origin was inside this. It is Brahma who has withdrawn. Who has withdrawn? Brahma himself had an urge to bring up again a world of consciousness, and this is the first attempt of waking up in the nothingness by something that was a faint expression of the consciousness. But recalling, as Shivandu says, the tenebrous womb from which it came, this had a tendency of going back to unconsciousness. It is like the origin of death. So she has now traced the origin of death, going back to the inconscience. That is the origin of death, you see. What death means is that, the tendency, you see. So she has kind of defined what death is here. The tendency to go back to the state of unconsciousness. Now here, we have got a phrase, we shall see this in more detail later on. First and last nothingness. Between the first and last nothingness, all this all this happens. But we shall see that in more detail later on. You see. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseen will, cradle the cosmic clouds of ignorant fold, whose mood creative slumber kindles the sun, and carries our life in its somnambulist world. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, a formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning the soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dream. Earth wheeled abandoned in the hollow ground, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. So all these things is happening on earth. Earth is now the focus of the whole thing. For the sake of evolution and ascension towards consciousness, earth was formed. Earth was created specifically for the sake of evolution and ascension of consciousness. But it was found naturally in the unconscious. And so Shivandu says, athwart the vain inordinate trance of space, is found stupor without mind of life. A shadow spinning through a soulless void. That is earth. A shadow spinning through a soulless void. Thrown back once more into unthinking dream. Earth will abandon in the hollow ground, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. Why she has come, what she is, what is her future, she is not aware of it. That is when the earth was created in the unconscious and in nothingness, the last nothingness. This is the last nothingness. In order to concentrate the effort of the working of evolution. What is the purpose of earth? To concentrate the effort of this spiritual work. That is the description of the beginning. Earth is specifically meant as if the whole thing is concentrated at one single place. That is important. To concentrate means it could have been any other planet or any other place also in the entire universe. Now, Earth is chosen for a specific purpose to develop all the necessary tools and instruments for growth and expansion and manifestation. Earth is the chosen place for that. As if you had taken a house and from there you want to carry out a lot of activities there, you see. That house is this earth, you see. But that house is also now surrounded by death, by darkness. That house is also housing the divine love. All the things. So earth, death and love all are getting focused for the whole. Earth began almost totally unconscious. He says, forgetful of spirit and fate. That is the beginning. The impassive skies are neutral, empty, still. Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred in nameless moment, a fathomless idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without an aim. Something that wished but knew not how to be. Tease inconscient to wake ignorance. So, as if you are prompting it to do something. This is the description, a very wonderful description of the beginning of aspiration. Tease inconscient ignorance, that is the beginning of aspiration. That's the definition of aspiration, you see, or the beginning of aspiration. How in the nothingness, in the inconscient, stirred the first moment of aspiration. So what a beautiful description of definition of aspiration here, you see, what that aspiration is. This is the description, a very wonderful description. So mother is giving mass to Shevandu, that's a wonderful description. See, as a teacher, she says, very beautiful, nice, you see. There was no mind, so it did not think. Even the vital was not organized, so it did not know how to be, but it stirred slowly to wake up the inconscient to something without knowing what it was. So that is the aspiration. So even in the grossest material thing, something is happening, that opening is coming up. That is the important thing, you see. There is no mind, there is no vital. This is the first vibration which preceded even form, the first beginning of aspiration toward the possibility of knowing. So what is totally inconscious, how does it know? It is that aspiration which is kindled here. A throw that came and left a quivering dream, gave room for an old tired want unfilled, at peace in subconscious moonless cave, to raise his head and look for absent light, straining closed eyes of vanished memory, like one who searches for a bygone self, and only meets the corpse of a desire. This is still the description of the world created by oblivion and becoming conscious, the aspiration. Its origin being the perfect truth consciousness. In spite of its division, in spite of its obscurity, it still contained the seed of consciousness and something like the want to return to it. That is the aspiration of the Christ. The want to return it. That is the worst desire in the language of Savitri, in the phrase of Savitri. That is the worst desire. It was as though even in this most profound, even in this ultimate dissolution's core, there lurked an unremembering entity, survivor of a slain and buried past, condemned to resume deferred and to pant, reviving in another frustrated world. The origin of light and consciousness, which it carried in itself, could not die because it is the seed, the very essence of immortality. And that began waking up. An unshaped consciousness desired light, and a blank prescience yearned towards a distant dream. It is the very beginning of the aspiration waking up in the inconscient to return to its conscious origin. It is the starting point, the first moment of evolution, the evolution that is the turning back of the inconscient to return to consciousness. As if a childlike finger laid on a cheek, reminded of the endless need of things to the heedless mother of the universe, an infant longing clutched the somber palm. Insensibly, somewhere a breeze began, A long, low line of hesitating hue, like a vague smile tempting to desert on. Trouble, the far rim of life's obscure sleeve. This is the waking of consciousness that Shivandu compares as to a smile. So it is a smile, Surya. He says, hesitating here. That is the first beginning of consciousness. It is like a very pale light, and he compares it to vague smile tempting, a vague smile tempting a desert heart. It was like a very faint light at the border of the obscure sleep of life, arrived from the other side of boundlessness. An eye of deity appears to the dumb, a scout and reconnaissance from the sun is saved amid a heavy cosmic rain, the torpor of a sick and weary world to see for a spirit, soul, and desolate, too fallen to recollect forgotten pain. The first vision of consciousness he compares to an eye of deity. First vision of consciousness is an eye of deity, piercing through the dumb deeps. This look is like a scout of reconnaissance from the sun. That is the symbol of consciousness. In the very cosmic realm, the torpor of a sick and weary world, too fallen to recollect forgotten brain, that is too unconscious to remember that conscious is intervening in a mindless universe. His message crept through the reluctant earth, calling the adventure of consciousness and joy, and conquering nature's disillusioned realm, compelled renewed consent to see and feel. That is just coming out from the complete unconsciousness of the stone and unreal towards the beginning of life. And this compelled, renewed consent to see and feel. And then it says, his message script. This is the first tending of thought into the world. A thought of soul and unsounded void. A sense was born within the darkness. A memory quivered in the heart of time, as if a soul long dead were moved to live. But the oblivion that succeeded the fall had blotted the crowded tablets to the palm, and all that was destroyed must be rebuilt, and old experience labored out once more. And then a thought was sown and sounded void. A sense was born within darkness dim. A memory quivered in the heart of time, as if a soul long dead were formed to live. That is the memory of the origin. It has the origin where from it has come. Then he described the resistance. But the oblivion that succeeds the fall had blotted the crowded tablets of the palm, and all that was destroyed must be rebuilt, and old experience labored out once more in front of all seems to have been destroyed. It is only a seeming because it is latent behind the unconscious. All can be done if the God touches there. All can be done if the God touches there. So this is the line summarizing the entire sequence of what has happened. A very aphoristic line, very famous line which is used everywhere. All can be done if the God touches there. And then the comforting assurance, all can be done if the God touches there. Now, what Shivandu is written here is God touches. God, G is small. God touches there. It's not big G. In second version of Savitri, 1954-1972, they have made it capital G. Now they are restored it back to small g. Obviously it is to be a small g. Because, not just because Shivandu has written it. Of course Shivandu has written it as a small g. Small God. Because it will be too heavy, too difficult, too even destructive for us if the big God touch is coming to us. It will be a small little touch only. Little, just a kind of prompting, little pushing things, you see. So it has to be a small God touch, you see. It's enough, you see. Now all can be done if the God touch is there. Now, of course, there is that if important. It is not that the God touch will always act. There are conditions for the God touch to act. And if those conditions are fulfilled, then all can be done. It demands certain kind of a readiness, preparedness, receptivity for the God touch to act. It is not just that God comes and touches and you go. No, you have to be kind of ready for that thing. You have to be ready. All can be done with the God. We shall see this in more detail. And then the assuring oil. So, in short, Shivandu is giving all the process of rebuilding the consciousness in the unconscious. He calls the separation the fall. That is truly a fall of consciousness into unconsciousness. And now he describes how the message sent from the Supreme to repair the harm done wakens up the consciousness as by a kind of imperative influence to begin to climb up back to the Supreme Consciousness. This ascent is the evolution that will make so many thousands and thousands of years. But so, see, this ascent is the evolution will take thousands and thousands of years. So, even if there is a God touch, see, you can't cut short these thousands and thousands of years, you see. But for a very long time, it was not measured. It is only when mind took the form in man that time began to be measured. And before, who can know how long it took to wake up from the complete unconsciousness? He is speaking of the starting point of this evolution. He is speaking from starting point to this evolution. Mother says, of course, there was nobody there to record at that time. She says, long before it took weight, means the mind was not there. So there was nobody, I was not there to know all the details at that time. Because she says, I awoke when the human tribe appeared on earth. And Savitri too awoke amid this human tribe. You see that. And then he says, all can be done with the God touch. Beautiful. A hope stole in a hardly dare to be amid the nights forlorn, indifferent, as if solicited in an alien world, with timid and hazardous instinctive grace, orphaned and driven out to speak a home, an errant marvel with no place to live, into a far off nook of heaven there came a slow, miraculous, gestures dim appeal. The persistent thrill of a transfiguring touch persuaded the inert black quietude and beauty and wonder disturbed the things of God. We may remember that Shivandu pushed together quietude, beauty, wonder. They seem to be at the beginning of the manifestation of the divine inconscient. Beauty, quietude, wonder. It started like that, quietude, beauty and wonder. A wandering hand of pale enchanted light that glowed along the fading woman's spring, fixed with gold panel and opalescent cane, a gate of dreams ajar on mystic worlds. One lucent corner windowing hidden thing, forced the world's blind immensity to light. The darkness faded and slipped like a falling cloak from the reclining body of a god. So this is a very original image, reclining body of God, and his robe is falling down, you see. That is how the darkness has faded. Then to the pallet rift that seemed at first hardly enough for a trickle from the sun, outpoured the revelation of the flame. A brief perpetual sign trickled above. A brief perpetual sign trickled above. A brief perpetual sign trickled above. What a line, you see. A brief perpetual sign trickled above. Perfect pentametric line also. What is a sign? Every perpetual sign indicated about what is that sign? Shivandu symbol. It is the most poetic way of describing the waking of consciousness to invisible thing. But why this waking up? What has created or given birth to this waking up? Shivandu says, the darkness failed and slipped like a falling cloak from the reclining body of a god. A god has come down upon earth to wake it up to the inner consciousness. We could say that this was the first avatar. It is the coming down of the first avatar to wake up the earth to consciousness. That is to bring an intensity of consciousness and realization into this inconscient world. That is obviously the description of the appearance of the first avatar. It starts from that because of he puts then to the pallet drift, the same that falls hardly enough for a trickle to the sun, outpours the revelation of the flame, the revelation of the flame, and the brief perpetual sign stickered above. This is the sign of the avatar, you see, coming down upon earth. We will listen some of these recitations in Mother's own voice.
It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marked, almost one felt opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless view, the abyss of the unbodied infinite, a fathomless zero occupied the world. It's what the vain, enormous trance of space, its formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dream. Earth, wheeled abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless movement, an unthought idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without a name, something that wished but knew not how to be, tease the inconscient to wake ignorance. An unshaped consciousness desired light, and blank presence yearned towards distant change, as if a childlike finger laid on a cheek reminded of the endless need in things, the heedless mother of the universe, an infant longing clutched the somber vast. Arrived from the other side of boundlessness, an eye of deity pierced through the dumb deeps. A scout in a reconnaissance from the sun, it seemed amid a heavy cosmic race, the torpor of a sick and weary world, to seek for a spirit, soul and desolate, too fallen to recollect forgotten bliss. The darkness failed and slipped like a falling cloak from the reclining body of a god. A glamour from the unreached transcendency, iridescent with the glory of the unseen, a message from the unknown immortal light, a blaze upon creation's quivering edge. Dawn built her aura of magnificent hues and buried its seed of grandeur in the hour. Earth felt the imperishable passage close. The waking ear of nature heard her steps, and wideness turned to her its limitless eyes, and scattered on sealed depths her luminous smile kindled to fire the silence of the world. Here, where our half-lit ignorance skirts the gulfs on the dumb bosom of the ambiguous earth, here, where one knows not even the step in front, and truth has her throne on the shadowy back of doubt. On this anguished and precarious field of toils, outspread beneath some large indifferent gaze, impartial witness to our joy and bale, our prostrate soil bore the awakening ray. And Savitri too awoke among these tribes that hastened to join the brilliant summoner's chant, a narrow movement on time's deep abyss. Life's fragile littleness denied the power. The proud and conscious whiteness and the bliss she had brought with her into the human form, the calm delight that wakes one's soul to awe, the key to the flaming door of ecstasy. Thus trapped in the gin of earthly destiny, awaiting her ordeal's hour abode, outcast from her inborn felicity, accepting life's obscure terrestrial home, hiding herself even from those she loved, the Godhead greater by a human fate. Against the evil at life's afflicted roots, her own calamity, its private sign. Of her pangs she made a mystic poignant sword. At the summons of her body's voiceless call, her strong, far-winged spirit traveled back to the yoke of ignorance and fate, back to the labor and stress of mortal days, lighting a pathway through strange symboldries across the ebbing of the seas of sleep. Immobile in herself, she gathered forth. This was the day when Satyavan must